I've always believed betrayal didn't just crash through your front door, it crept in slowly, disguised as silence, distance, or in my case, a dress. A single dress that should have told me everything. That night was supposed to be routine. Dinner at her brother Greg's house like we did once a month. I'd been tired from work but looking forward to it. Her family was tight-knit, loud, opinionated, judgmental, but familiar. I'd grown comfortable in the rhythm of it all. I thought Laura had too. She told me earlier that afternoon she'd be running late, something about errands. She didn't offer specifics. I didn't ask. If I'm honest, I'd stopped asking a while ago. It was easier that way. Less conflict. Less guessing if the tone in her voice meant what I feared it did. I got there early, helped Greg bring chairs in from the garage, small-talked with his wife Tina in the kitchen. We joked about the overcooked roast from last time and who'd be the first to start a political argument. It felt normal. Then, 40 minutes into dinner, she arrived. I was in the middle of pouring wine for her mother when the front door opened. Conversation stopped for a second and everyone turned their heads. She stepped inside like she was entering a gala, not her brother's dining room. Laura was wearing that dark green silk dress. The one with the low back and thin straps. The one she wore on our anniversary 2 years ago when we'd gone to that rooftop restaurant in the city. She had heels on, taller than usual. Her hair was done in soft curls and her makeup was bold like she was about to walk on stage. And then there was the smirk. It wasn't playful or bashful. It wasn't her "I messed up but you love me" grin. It was something else entirely. Detached. Pleased. Like she was about to drop a bomb and couldn't wait to see the fallout. "Traffic," she said casually as she handed her coat to Greg. "Sorry I'm late." Greg didn't know what to say. None of us did. Her mom tried to hide her confusion by offering a plate. Her dad kept his eyes fixed on the new man walking in behind her. I didn't move from my spot at the table. The man trailed just behind her, awkward and silent. Tan blazer. Tight jawline. Hair slicked back like he was trying to shave a decade off his age. I had never seen him before. That wouldn't last long. Laura didn't come to me. She walked right to the empty chair between Tina and her cousin Dana's usual spot and gestured toward the man. "This is Trevor," she said, her tone light, almost rehearsed. "A friend of mine." I stared. He didn't look at me. Just nodded politely toward the room. The dinner stumbled forward after that. People smiled too tightly. Forks clinked against plates. I tried to hold a conversation with Greg about football but couldn't hear myself over the thudding in my ears. Laura laughed too loud at things that weren't funny. She poured herself wine like she was at a wedding. Not once did she sit beside me. Not once did she look at me for more than a half second. I couldn't tell if I was having a slow panic attack or a revelation. Something inside me was screaming to leave. But I didn't. I stayed seated. Because that's what you do at family dinners. You hold it together. And then, just when dessert was about to be served, Laura tapped her spoon against her glass. The sound was sharp, intentional. Everyone turned toward her. "I know this is kind of random," she said, standing. Her hand brushed Trevor's shoulder as she rose. "But I have something I'd like to share." My gut twisted. The back of my neck burned. I remember her dad muttering under his breath, "Oh no." Laura smiled wide and open like this was a toast at a wedding. "So," she began, "I've been going through some changes lately. And it's been a journey. A really personal one. But I've come to realize I've been pretending for a long time." People shifted in their chairs. "And I can't do that anymore. I've started seeing someone. I'm in a new relationship." Silence. Dead. Heavy. The air got thick. You could hear forks drop and glasses freeze midair. Her mom dropped her napkin. Greg blinked like he was trying to unsee what he just heard. Tina turned her face away like she was embarrassed on Laura's behalf. I couldn't speak. My mouth was open, I think, but no sound came out. I glanced around the table looking for some explanation. A joke. A bad prank. Something. But nothing came. Trevor sat frozen, staring at the table. And then her dad leaned forward, frowning. "Wait a second," he said, squinting. "Trevor. Trevor Miller." Trevor hesitated, then gave a small nod. Her dad's eyes narrowed. "You're Dana's husband." Time stopped. Dana, Laura's cousin. Her father's niece. Married with 2 daughters. The same Dana who had called Laura her rock during a hard year. The same Dana who had just left the house 30 minutes earlier to put her youngest down for a nap in the guest room. No one said a word. Not even Laura. Just for a second, the smile dropped. I saw something real flicker across her face. Something like fear or guilt or maybe just annoyance that her reveal didn't go to plan. Then she spoke. Fast. Defensive. "It's not like that," she said, her voice higher now. "This isn't some affair. We're just close. We're supporting each other through a lot right now. Her mother let out a gasp. Someone's fork hit the floor. Laura turned, finally meeting my eyes. And this is the part I'll never forget. She looked at me like I was the reason any of this was happening. Mark has been emotionally unavailable for a long time, she said, not even flinching. I've tried to hold things together. For years. But I got tired of pretending we were okay when we're not. I needed someone who actually saw me. I didn't move. Couldn't. My brain was trying to catch up to the script she was reading aloud. One I'd never seen before. Emotionally unavailable? Since when? I wasn't perfect, but I was there. I worked, I cooked, I showed up. Maybe not with flowers every week, but with presence. With loyalty. This wasn't planned, Laura went on. It just happened, and I'm not ashamed of it. Greg stood up abruptly. Okay, I think that's enough, he said, voice firm. But Laura shook her head, her hands trembling just slightly. No, I'm done hiding. Everyone deserves to know. Trevor shifted, clearly wanting to disappear. I don't know if he regretted being there or was just shocked she pulled the pin on the grenade herself. Either way, he wasn't going to defend her. Not publicly. Her mom was crying now. Silent tears. Her dad sat back in his chair like someone had punched him. And me? I sat perfectly still, like if I didn't move, none of it was real. But it was. It was all real. The woman I'd built a life with had walked into a family dinner, late and smug, wearing a dress meant for a man who wasn't me, and announced she'd traded out her husband for someone else's, and then blamed me for it. I don't remember much after that. Tina started clearing dishes no one had finished. Greg ushered his parents into the living room. Trevor muttered something about needing air and walked outside. Laura looked at me like she expected me to yell, cry, or storm out. But I didn't. I just sat there, staring at the empty space on the table where my hand had been. It was in that moment I realized something awful. She'd been planning this. Maybe not the exact words. Maybe not the moment. But this whole unraveling, it wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't a slip. It was a message. To them. To me. Maybe even to herself. She wasn't pretending anymore. After that dinner, if you can even call it a dinner, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed that night with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second like it was a crime scene. Her dress, the smirk, the way she rested her hand on Trevor's shoulder like it was natural. The silence that followed when her father recognized him. The moment she turned on me like I was the one who owed an explanation. But what haunted me more than the dinner itself were all the things that suddenly made sense in its aftermath. All the details that had piled up over the last few months, each one small enough to ignore, until they formed a mountain I could no longer pretend wasn't there. It started with the gym. Out of nowhere, Laura got into fitness. And not just weekend yoga or morning walks, no, this was obsessive. She went from never owning a pair of running shoes to meal prepping, joining 2 separate studios, and buying leggings like they were currency. She said she was just trying to feel better. I encouraged it. I thought maybe it was a phase or stress relief. But the way she would come home, sweaty, flushed, and glowing in a way that had nothing to do with cardio, didn't sit right with me. Then came the girls' trips. At first, they seemed harmless. A weekend here, a spa day there. Laura always had a tight group of friends, college roommates, old coworkers, and they'd taken the occasional getaway over the years. But suddenly, these trips became more frequent. Once a month, sometimes twice. She'd leave on a Friday, come back Sunday night, exhausted but evasive. No pictures, no stories, no souvenirs. When I asked how it went, she'd wave it off. Good. Relaxing. Nothing special. That's when I started noticing her phone habits. She used to be careless with her phone. Left it on the counter while cooking, on the nightstand while we slept. Now it was never more than an arm's reach away. She'd flip it face down every time she set it down. If I walked into the room while she was texting, the screen would suddenly go black. She claimed she was just checking group chats or making appointments. But more than once, I saw her delete messages as soon as she read them. I didn't say anything. I told myself I was being paranoid. that I'd watched too many movies or read too many threads online, that it was just modern behavior and I was overreacting. But inside, I knew something had shifted. There were new earrings in her drawer, delicate gold hoops I hadn't seen before. A bracelet with a charm engraved, "Breathe," still in the box. When I asked her about them, she said she'd gotten them on sale. One of those online flash deals, she said with a laugh. I pretended to believe her. One night, she came home late, said she'd had dinner with a friend from work. I noticed a faint line of lipstick on her neck, just under her jaw. When I pointed it out, she said, "That's probably from trying on lipstick at Sephora." It was plausible enough, but it didn't explain the cologne I didn't recognize on her coat, or the fact that the restaurant she mentioned had already closed down months ago. I looked it up after she went to sleep, just to be sure. I started paying attention more. Sometimes I'd test her, ask her where she was going. She always had an answer, always casual: Target, yoga, coffee with Steph. But once I called Steph pretending to ask about a mutual friend's birthday. She said she hadn't seen Laura in weeks. My throat went dry, but I didn't push it. I kept the information to myself, like I was collecting puzzle pieces in secret. Then came the night she said she was too tired to join me at my cousin's engagement party. Said she had a headache, needed rest. I offered to stay home with her, maybe watch a movie, order takeout. She told me to go without her, that she'd feel guilty keeping me from seeing family. I went, but something didn't sit right. When I got back, she was in bed. Lights off. "Sorry, I missed it," she mumbled. The next morning, I noticed something odd. Our bottle of wine was half empty. 2 glasses in the sink. Different lipstick marks on each. I stared at them for a long time before washing them. I didn't ask her about it. I think I was afraid of what she'd say. Even our Macy had changed. Laura stopped kissing me goodbye. Stopped reaching for my hand on the couch. We hadn't been mate in over a month. When I brought it up once, she said, "I just haven't felt like myself lately." I nodded, trying to be supportive. But I felt like a ghost in my own marriage. Present, visible, but never really seen. She started sleeping on the edge of the bed, facing away. There were moments, fleeting ones, where I almost confronted her. Like the time I saw her walk outside during a phone call, whispering while pacing up and down the driveway. Or when she came home flustered, clutching her purse like a lifeline, and snapped at me for asking if everything was okay. "Why are you always checking on me?" she asked. "Can't I have a moment to breathe?" That line stuck with me. Because it wasn't the words, it was the way she said them. Like she resented me for even existing in her orbit. Like my concern was an intrusion. I didn't realize it then, but I think that was the beginning of her rewrite. Of the version she would present at Greg's dinner table. The Mark is distant narrative. The he's cold performance. She was laying the groundwork, making sure the story looked believable from the outside. I blamed myself at first. Wondered if I'd done something to drive her away. Maybe I hadn't listened enough. Maybe I'd stopped showing up in the little ways, notes, hugs, compliments. But the deeper I dug into those memories, the more I realized I had been there. I had always been there. She was the one pulling away. She was the one creating space so she could later claim it had always been there. After the dinner, I checked her laptop. I'd never done that before. She'd left it open on the kitchen island. Emails were minimized, but I opened them. I found confirmation in subject lines: alone, meeting at 7, can't wait to see you, let's be careful tonight. Nothing with names, but enough to feel sick. She had a whole life I wasn't invited to. I started to wonder when the first domino fell. Was it a flirt at work? A harmless message? Did she fall in love with someone else slowly, or did she just stop being in love with me all at once? And where did Trevor come in? That's the question I kept circling back to. He wasn't just some new guy. He was married to Dana. He had kids. I'd seen him at reunions, blending into the background, quiet but always polite. How long had they been circling each other? Was it during those family events? Birthday parties? Christmas? Did Laura make eyes at him across the room while I refilled wine glasses? Did he watch her when she laughed at my jokes? Or worse, did they sneak away? Right under our noses? It was almost too much to process. After dinner that night, I sat in the car outside Greg's house for 20 minutes. I didn't have the strength to start the engine. I just sat there, staring at the house that had gone dark, wondering how I'd become the outsider in my own life. I realized I'd been lied to for months. Not just through words, but through smiles, through touches withheld, through silence. The dress, the smirk, the toast, that was the finale. The betrayal had been unfolding all along. I just hadn't seen it. Or maybe I had. And I just didn't want to believe it. There's a strange kind of stillness that follows the moment you stop making excuses for someone. It's like the fog lifts and everything you didn't want to see is suddenly blindingly clear. For weeks after that dinner, I kept trying to rationalize it, Laura's behavior, her words, even Trevor's presence. Maybe she was just overwhelmed. Maybe Trevor was a temporary escape, a stupid mistake that she'd eventually realize meant nothing. But the truth? The truth didn't care about maybes. It came crashing in one quiet Thursday afternoon. I was returning from a 3-day business trip. I hadn't told Laura I'd moved my flight up. I was supposed to land Friday evening, but I caught an earlier one so I could surprise her. I even picked up her favorite pastries from a shop by the airport. It was the kind of gesture I hadn't made in a while. Maybe deep down, I hoped it would be a spark that we could still fix things somehow. I parked outside the house around 2 p.m. and noticed something odd right away. Her car was in the driveway, which didn't make sense. She had told me she'd be working late that day. I felt a twinge of something in my chest, but I ignored it. Maybe she left work early. Maybe she was sick. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. The front door was unlocked. I stepped inside and immediately knew something was off. The living room was too quiet. The hallway too still. The kitchen light was on, but no one was there. I set the pastry box on the counter, walked toward the stairs, and that's when I heard it, voices. One of them was Laura's. The other was unmistakably male. I can't tell you what they were saying. My brain refused to process it. I moved slowly, each step up the stairs feeling like I was dragging my body through quicksand. I stopped in front of our bedroom door. It was slightly ajar. Light spilled out through the crack. And then I saw it. A man's shirt draped over the dresser. Laura's scarf tossed on the floor. Her shoes beside the bed. I pushed the door open. There they were. Laura and Trevor. Sitting on the edge of her bed, close together. Her hair was damp like she had just showered. His hand was resting on her thigh. They both froze when they saw me. The look on Laura's face, I'll never forget it. Not fear. Not shame. Just surprise. Like she'd been caught stealing a snack before dinner. "Mark," she said, standing quickly. "What are you?" "I came home early," I said, my voice flat. I couldn't even raise it. My heart was racing, but I felt nothing. Numb. Trevor stood up too, scrambling to find his shirt. "This isn't what it looks like," Laura said, like she was reading from a bad script. "He just came by to check on me. I wasn't feeling well." I looked around the room. Our room. The bed we'd picked out together. The photos on the wall. The sweater she always borrowed from me, now on the floor beside her purse. Then I saw it on the nightstand. A small box of chocolates, half empty. A note tucked underneath the lid. I walked over and picked it up. It said, "2 weeks ago today. Can't stop thinking about you. T." I held it up for her to see. She didn't say a word. "Still just a check-in visit?" I asked, my voice cracking. Trevor looked like he wanted to disappear. He grabbed his jacket and muttered, "I'm sorry," before rushing out of the room. I didn't stop him. I didn't need to. The damage was already done. Laura started to speak, but I raised a hand. "Don't," I said. "Don't lie to me anymore." "I wasn't lying," she said, and I actually laughed. It was hollow, humorless. "You weren't lying?" I repeated. "So I just happened to walk in on the man you brought to our family dinner, in our bed, with chocolates and a love note, and that's what? A coincidence." She sat back down on the bed and put her head in her hands. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this," she said. "You mean you didn't mean for me to find out at all?" Silence. I walked downstairs, needing space, needing air. But something stopped me in the kitchen. A receipt on the counter. A hotel receipt. Room 204. Dinner for 2. Champagne. From 3 nights ago, the same night she told me she was sleeping over at her friend Jill's after a wine night. I picked it up and held it as she came down the stairs, barefoot, quiet. "You've been lying for months," I said. "All the trips. All the late nights. The gym. The jewelry. The texts you kept hiding. It wasn't just emotional. You've been with him. In asterisk mately. You brought him here." Her face hardened. "If you hadn't come home early, you wouldn't have noticed." That hit me harder than anything else. Not the affair. Not the lies. But that sentence. That cold, careless sentence. "So that's it?" I asked. "You're not sorry? Just annoyed you got caught?" She crossed her arms. "What do you want me to say, Mark? That I've been unhappy? That you stopped seeing me years ago? That I found something I couldn't find with you?" I shook my head. "No. I want you to admit this wasn't just a reaction to a bad marriage. This was a choice. 1,000 choices. And you made every one of them knowing what it would do to us." She didn't respond. I left the house for a few hours after that. Just drove. No destination. I didn't even turn the radio on. I needed the silence. I needed to hear myself think again after months of confusion. When I got back, Laura was packing a bag. "Where are you going?" I asked. "To my sister's," she said. "I figured you'd want space." "You figured right." She hesitated in the doorway. "This wasn't supposed to happen like this." "But it did," I replied. "And it wasn't an accident." I watched her leave without another word. The next morning I found one last thing. A second phone. Hidden in the drawer under the bathroom sink. Password protected. But the wallpaper gave it away. A photo of Trevor's dog. The same one Dana had posted on Facebook months ago. I didn't need to unlock it. I already knew everything I needed to know. That night I changed the locks. She texted me later, saying she'd be back for more things. That we needed to talk. That she was still figuring things out. But I wasn't. I was done figuring. Done questioning. The betrayal wasn't a question mark anymore. It was a period. A full stop. And whatever came next, it wouldn't include her. After everything blew up with Laura, I thought the worst was behind me. That the confrontation, the discovery, the coldness in her voice when she said I wouldn't have noticed if I hadn't come home early, that those were the low points. But I was wrong. There was another crack waiting to split open. One that hit even deeper. Our son, Jake. He was 15. Sharp. Quiet. Always watching more than speaking. A kid who noticed everything, even when you hoped he didn't. And for months, he'd been walking on eggshells around the tension Laura and I hadn't dared name. I kept telling myself he was just caught up in school, sports, his phone. But the truth is, he'd been silently collecting the truth long before I did. I just didn't want to believe it. The day after I found Laura and Trevor in our bedroom, I tried to keep things normal for Jake's sake. I made breakfast. I asked about school. I even packed his lunch, which I hadn't done in a while. He didn't say much. Just kept his eyes low, shoulders tense. Like he knew something had shifted in the walls of the house. Laura was gone by then, off to her sister's, like she said. I hadn't told Jake the full story. Not yet. But I knew he was waiting, watching, filling in the blanks. It didn't take long. That night, I heard a soft knock on my door. Jake stepped inside, holding a photo frame. The one that used to sit on the bookshelf in the living room. It was from our last family trip to Colorado. The three of us standing in front of a waterfall, smiling. The kind of smile you assume is real at the time. He didn't say anything. Just walked over to the table, set the frame down, and slid a sticky note underneath it. Then he looked at me and said, "You don't have to explain. I already know." I looked at the note. It read, "That was then. Now you're outside." He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to her. I didn't ask how he found out. Maybe he heard the fight. Maybe he saw the hotel receipt. Maybe he had already been piecing it together from the nights she left him waiting, the canceled movie nights, the whispered phone calls through the walls. Whatever it was, Jake wasn't confused. He wasn't crying. He wasn't yelling. He was finished. "She doesn't live here anymore," he said softly. I stood frozen in place, unsure whether to be proud of his strength or crushed by the situation that made him this hard. I finally found my voice. "Jake," I said, "I didn't want you to be caught in the middle of this." "You didn't put me here," he said. "She did." The next day, Laura came by to pick up more of her things. She texted me ahead of time. Said she wanted to be quick. Said she didn't want to cause a scene. I didn't respond. Jake was sitting in the living room when she came in. He didn't get up. Didn't greet her. She walked in like she owned the space, her heels clicking softly against the hardwood floor. She looked around, then spotted him. "Hey, buddy," she said, too brightly. "How's school?" He didn't answer. She tried again. "I've been meaning to talk to you. I know things are tense right now, but I want you to know, no matter what, I love you. Okay?" He didn't even look up. Just said, "Then why'd you blow up our life?" The question hit her like a slap. "I didn't mean to," she said. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way." Jake finally looked at her. His face was blank, but his eyes were sharp. "But it did. And you chose it." "I didn't choose to hurt you," she replied, her voice trembling now. "Yes, you did," he said. "Because you didn't stop." I stayed in the hallway out of sight, listening. My heart ached. Not just because he was right, but because no kid should have to speak to their parent like that. Then he stood up, walked to the table, and picked up the same photo frame. Without a word, he handed it to her. "So you remember what you threw away," he said. "You don't belong here anymore." Laura stood there, stunned. Her fingers trembled as she held the photo, her nails tapping against the glass. Then something changed in her face. The guilt shifted, hardened. She turned toward me as I stepped into the room. "You turned him against me," she snapped. "No," I said. "You did that all by yourself." She looked back at Jake, desperate now. "Please don't do this. I'm still your mom." "You were," he said. "Now you're just someone who lied." That broke her. She staggered back a step, her composure cracking. Her breathing became shallow, her eyes wide. And then, for the first time since this started, she panicked. Not wept, not apologized. Panicked. "Mark, do something," she shouted. "He can't talk to me like this." But I didn't move. She looked between us, trying to collect herself, but the control she thought she had was gone. Jake left the room without another word. She stood there holding the frame like it was a lifeline, then finally set it back on the table and picked up her bag. On her way out, she turned to me again. "He's going to regret this." "No," I said. "You will." She didn't respond. She just walked out and closed the door behind her. And that was it. The quiet afterward felt like stepping into a house after a storm. The air was different. Not peaceful, not yet, but cleared. The lies weren't bouncing off the walls anymore. The gaslighting had stopped. The confusion had ended. And the person who always made us feel like we were crazy for asking questions was finally out of the picture. Jake stayed in his room the rest of the night. I checked on him once, and he nodded when I asked if he needed anything. We didn't speak more than a few words, but the silence between us wasn't heavy. It was understanding. The next morning, I found him in the kitchen making toast. "She's gonna come back," he said, not looking up. "Maybe," I replied, "but we're not letting her back in." He nodded once, then handed me the last piece of bread. We sat at the table, father and son, sharing breakfast in the aftermath of everything. There were no tears, no forced smiles, just two people picking up the pieces of a life someone else had shattered. And somehow that felt like the first real moment of healing. I used to think the worst part of betrayal was the moment you discovered it. But I was wrong. The worst part is what comes after, when the person who broke you decides to fight for control over the pieces. Not out of love or remorse or even a desire to fix things, but because losing control is the one thing they can't stand. 2 weeks after Laura left, I filed for divorce and full custody of Jake. It wasn't a dramatic decision. It wasn't made out of revenge or anger. It was simple. I couldn't trust her. Not with our son. Not with our home. Not with anything that mattered. The morning after I submitted the paperwork, my attorney called. "You're going to want to brace yourself," she said. Her lawyer already responded, and they're coming out swinging. Swinging was an understatement. In her official response, Laura accused me of emotional neglect, mental manipulation, and creating a toxic environment for both her and Jake. She painted herself as a woman pushed to the edge by years of coldness and control. The filing claimed I used Jake as a P*N against her, that I poisoned his view of her, isolated her from support, and that her relationship with Trevor was the result of emotional abandonment. Reading it felt like walking into a funhouse mirror. Everything was distorted, twisted, a version of reality where I was the villain in a story she'd rewritten from scratch. I stared at the printed statements in my lawyer's office, hands shaking with a rage I couldn't show in court. "She's turning this into a performance," I said. My attorney nodded grimly. "We see this a lot when one side gets caught. They pivot. They throw everything at the wall and see what sticks." I asked her, point blank, "Can she win this?" She paused. "If we don't counter hard?" "Yes. But you have documentation, messages, witnesses." "Jake." Still, it shook me. This wasn't about marriage anymore. This was war, and Laura was playing dirty. The next blow came less than a week later. Jake called me while I was at work. His voice was tense, scared. Dad. She was waiting outside school. I stopped breathing. What do you mean, waiting? She was parked across the street. I saw her when I came out. She waved me over and said she just wanted to talk. When I tried to walk away, she grabbed my arm. I was already out the door. Jake was fine physically. A security guard from the school intervened. But Laura had tried to corner him off campus without notifying anyone. No agreement. No permission. Just entitlement. What she didn't count on was the school's security cameras. They caught the whole thing. Her standing next to her car, stepping into Jake's path, reaching out and grabbing his arm when he tried to walk away. You could even hear her on the audio saying, "Don't walk away from me, I'm your mother." We got the footage. I handed it straight to my lawyer. "This changes things," she said. "This isn't just a custody disagreement now. This is leverage." But Laura wasn't done. She began posting on social media long, vague posts about betrayal, about being a survivor, about how sometimes the ones closest to you cut the deepest. Friends and family started texting me asking if I was okay or if what she was saying was true. She told mutual friends that I turned Jake against her, that I was brainwashing him. Some of them believed her. Others stayed quiet. At first, I tried to stay above it. I didn't engage. I didn't post rebuttals or try to set the record straight. But then I got a call from Jake's school counselor. "We had a teacher bring up concerns," she said. "Apparently your son's mother submitted a formal complaint that you were mentally unstable and may be influencing him inappropriately at home." I nearly dropped the phone. "She did what?" "She tried to schedule an emergency meeting with the administration," the counselor said. "Claimed you were isolating Jake from her as an act of revenge." And that's when I realized she wasn't trying to win. She was trying to break me. She'd already lost her son emotionally, but instead of accepting that, she was trying to rewrite the script. To flip the narrative. To take the pain she caused and project it back onto me, louder and bolder and without hesitation. But she underestimated two things. 1, I had evidence. 2, I wasn't backing down. I began organizing everything. Texts she'd sent about her trips, photos of her with Trevor taken at family events, *TS of hotel receipts, and most importantly, the video from the school. Jake also wrote a statement. Voluntarily. I didn't ask him to. He just walked into my office one night with a piece of paper and said, "I think the court should know how I feel." His words were raw, honest, painful to read. He wrote about the nights she left without saying goodbye. About hearing her whispering on the phone. About pretending not to notice when she came home smelling like someone else's cologne. About the way she looked right through him when he tried to talk to her. About how she only seemed to care when she wanted something. The final paragraph broke me. "I used to wait at the window for her car to pull in. I don't do that anymore. Because waiting for someone who doesn't come home just teaches you how to stop hoping. I don't want to feel that way again." I gave the statement to our attorney, who immediately added it to our filing. When the court date arrived, I walked into that courtroom not as a man who'd been cheated on, but as a father fighting for his son. Laura showed up in a navy blue blazer, eyes rimmed in red, holding a tissue like it was part of her costume. Her lawyer leaned over and whispered things between tears. It was all very dramatic. When it was her turn, she gave a performance. She cried. Said she only wanted to rebuild the family. That she'd made mistakes but was being vilified for needing emotional connection. She claimed I was punishing her for moving on. That Jake had been manipulated into fearing her. That I was spiteful and unwell. But facts don't care about feelings. And evidence doesn't cry. My lawyer presented the footage of her grabbing Jake outside school. We showed messages where she coordinated meetups with Trevor while telling me she was out with friends. We read Jake's statement aloud, every word. The judge asked him separately if he felt safe with either parent. He looked his honor in the eye and said, "With my dad." "Only my dad." Laura tried to interrupt. She raised her voice. Claimed we coached him. That he didn't understand. The judge wasn't moved. By the time we left the courtroom, the outcome was clear. I was granted full custody. She was awarded supervised visits only pending a psychological evaluation and a parental mediation course. Laura didn't speak to me on the way out. But as we passed each other in the hall, she leaned in and whispered, "You'll regret this." I looked her in the eye, calm as I'd ever been. "No. You will. One day. When the silence you created finally feels louder than the lies you told." She didn't respond. She just walked away, heels echoing through the corridor like a warning no one would listen to anymore. And for the first time in months, I exhaled. It wasn't over. But the damage had a boundary now. And I wasn't on the receiving end of her story anymore. The final hearing didn't drag. By then, the judge had seen enough messages, footage, Jake's statement, even a report from the school counselor. Laura showed up looking hollowed out, still clinging to the performance she'd started months ago. She cried on the stand, said she wanted her family back, said she was just a woman who wanted to feel loved. But her story didn't hold. Too many contradictions. Too much evidence. Jake's quiet honesty was what sealed it. He told the court in his own words that he didn't feel safe being alone with her. That she scared him, not physically but emotionally. That he didn't trust her anymore. When the judge ruled in my favor, awarding me full custody and ordering supervised visits for her, she didn't cry. Not really. Her face just shifted like someone who lost a game she thought she rigged. As we left the courtroom, she walked past me and hissed, "You'll pay for this." I didn't flinch. I didn't even look at her. Because I knew she wasn't mourning the family. She was mourning the control. She didn't lose me. She lost what she never valued, her son, her home, and the life she traded away for something that never even lasted. In the weeks that followed, something shifted in our house. Jake started sleeping through the night again.